A good Wednesday morning to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here on 13 WMAZ Plus for a look at your extended forecast. Going to go in depth about each day of your 7-day forecast and talk about what's in store as we head closer and closer to the weekend. So right now we will start out with yesterday's almanac. So I'm kind of rearranging the order of this as of lately, but we did hit a high temperature of 83 yesterday. So that's the second day in a row that we hit the number of 83 for our high temperature. And that fell 2 degrees below average, a little bit above average as we started out the day around 61 degrees up here in Macon. Still not approaching anything in terms of record-breaking territory. And Middle Georgia Regional Airport didn't record any rain yesterday, so we have seen this year departure go down closer to the 0 mark, only hovering about 5/100ths of an inch above average now as opposed to about 1/10 of an inch yesterday. Sunrise yesterday, 6:37 in the morning, and sunset at 8:25. So right now, we'll take a look at your 2025 rainfall graphic. We didn't get anything yesterday at Middle Georgia Regional Airport, so we fell a little bit in the month of May, but still hovering about 2.5 inches above where we should be at this point in May. We're not even halfway through the entire month so far, and we've gotten a lot of rain already, I think upwards to about 3.5 inches total. So this is as of yesterday. We'll continue to see if maybe we get a scattered shower or maybe even a low-end thunderstorm today to try to add on a little bit of cushion to this number, because if we don't get any rain today, I imagine that number is going to fall back below average, maybe only about 100th or 200ths of an inch. But still, we're a lot closer than where we were as of this time last week. We were hovering somewhere maybe about 2.5 inches below average. So it's good to see that we are trending pretty normal in terms of where our rainfall is now. So headlines, a few rain chances are still in the forecast for today, and then we actually will get a break from seeing those rain chances as we head into the weekend. 90s as soon as tomorrow with the question mark. It's looking very, very likely that we could see the 90s for the first time as we head into tomorrow. We'll go into that in a little more detail as we go into the end of your extended forecast. So here's the story in Central Georgia. Cloud cover is present kind of far and wide, maybe over to the east and northeast of us. That's what we take a look at off in the distance up here in downtown Macon, but it's still a story of mostly blue skies, lots and lots of sunshine. No clouds whatsoever looking westward in Houston County down in Warner Robins off Cohen Walker Drive. Down to the Georgia National Fairgrounds, maybe a cloud or two in the forecast, but still looking like a beautiful sunny day. In downtown Dublin, we can see a few clouds there off in the distance, but overall, there's nothing in the way of rain like we did see crossing some of the sky cams yesterday. Even during the last cut-in yesterday morning, we saw one of those very isolated showers move through our Warner Robins sky cam area. And it did have its fair share of some heavy downpours with it, but nothing that resulted in a thunderstorm, thankfully. So temperature-wise, low 70s, mid 70s, a lot of upper 70s, a train of 77s from Gordon into Lawrence County and Dublin, all the way to Toombs County and Vidalia, along with Rochelle at 77 degrees. We are already getting pretty close to the 80-degree mark even before the midday hour. We're actually going to warm up a little bit more than we have as of the last 2 days previously. Here's a look at your current temperatures. 78's down in Florida, 76 over to the east of us in Charleston, South Carolina, 78 Panama City, 79 in New Orleans, 79 in Houston and Laredo. If you know any folks in Texas, tell them to go ahead and make sure that they're heading outside right now, because their forecasted highs later on this afternoon, they're talking 100s, 105s, maybe even 110s in some areas. So while we're talking about maybe the first time hitting the 90s so far this year, just be very thankful that it's nowhere near as warm as it is in the Lone Star State over to the west. Dallas already at 81 degrees, and they got a little bit of a later start to sunrise than we did. It is cooler up along the Appalachian Mountains. You get up into Charlotte, North Carolina, which isn't necessarily near the mountains, but 69 degrees, 67 up in Lexington. Heading up to D.C., 67 degrees as well. Overall, 60s and 70s seem to be the trend across the eastern half of the U.S. Still a bit humid out there. It's a noticeable humidity. Some patches of the dark green will start to pop up here and there. That's going to be where your dew points get 70 plus. And it's going to kind of remain that story. We're not looking at any big systems to kind of run through central Georgia, usher in some slightly drier air. The humidity is going to continue to be at noticeable levels, might even go up a little bit to where we see a lot more of that dark green color. That kind of makes sense. Once we get into the neighborhood of the 90s here, getting that early start to summer, yes, we're going to filter humidity back into the forecast as well. Winds and wind gusts, maybe a gust up to 12 miles per hour right now up in Milledgeville. Overall, a steady breeze, maybe about 5 to 10 miles per hour. We could see an occasional gust just like yesterday, upwards to 15, 17, possibly even 25 or 20 miles per hour throughout this afternoon. So a bit of a breezy day, but it's also kind of just blowing that humidity in your face if it is pretty noticeable. And with dew points in the upper 60s, a lot of these temperatures are probably going to virtually feel a little bit warmer in terms of what they actually feel like outside, the heat index number. So a couple weeks ago, we were talking about things like wind chill in the morning. Well, now we are flipping the script and we're going into the feels like temperatures that we start to refer to as heat index, where the humidity makes that temperature feel a little bit warmer. So we should be in the 80s by about the noon hour, and then our meteogram has us topping out somewhere along the mid 80s, 84, 85 degrees heading into 4 and 5 o'clock. I think we're once again going to exceed what that meteogram does say as we head into the afternoon and early evening hours. Here's a look at your satellite and radar picture, that cloud cover that we were spotting on some of the sky cams present in our northernmost counties up into our northeastern counties, but mainly back up into South Carolina, maybe a little bit more wraparound cloud cover coming in from the north and the northwest. I want to take it over here to your satellite and radar, and I'm actually going to drag this back instead of just giving you a brief glimpse of what was going on earlier this morning. So you can see that we had a good cluster of some scattered showers, even some pockets of heavy rain, a couple rumbles of thunder indicated by the lightning strikes that you do see. North Georgia saw their fair share of some lower end thunderstorms this morning. And even these lower end thunderstorms did produce a little bit of a hail core. None of it came to fruition here in central Georgia, but our northernmost counties, that's where we were looking at some of those showers clipping. And that happened in Putnam County. Jasper County saw a few sprinkles around the Lake Oconee area, just north of Eatonton, maybe northern portions of Hancock County. I think those are going to be the areas that probably have the greater chance of seeing some rain at the very least, or maybe even a storm or two this afternoon, and I'll show you why in just one second. But we'll go into the big picture view across the entire state of Georgia. Most of the rain that was present early this morning has fizzled out and started to dissipate. We could look at more showers to build in once we get into the warmer portions of the day. But right now, most of the rain is going to be to the north of us later on today, areas farther down to the south. I really think south of Macon, farther to the north, are going to be the areas that do have a greater chance of seeing some rain. And this was yesterday's surface map, but it still kind of remains of the same picture. This low pressure center that was way down here along the Gulf Coast as of the last couple of days this past weekend has continued to move northward. It's actually a little bit closer to Lake Michigan now, up in the Great Lakes area of the country. So we're continuing to see that center of low pressure creep farther and farther away. So all of the precipitation associated around that low pressure center are going to continue to move out of the picture as well. And finally, tomorrow, it looks to finally at least move a little bit too far out of the picture to where we don't have any rain chances. But still another day of me telling you hit or miss showers. Going to be mostly dry after it clears out, or mostly dry this afternoon, rather, I should say. Most everyone will remain dry, very similar to yesterday. Any rain that you do see is going to be isolated, and it's going to maybe crowd one end of the county. The other end of the county is going to remain nice and dry. So that's why I think plenty of areas will see temperatures higher than what our meteogram graphic was just showing. Somewhere in the mid to maybe even flirting with the upper 80s. Around 87 is the high temperature I do have forecasted for today, and it would put us back above average. We've been in the low 80s the last couple of days. Obviously still fairly warm as you are outside, but now we're kind of getting into borderline hot territory. Not necessarily today. We've seen the upper 80s pretty recently over the last month. And I did mention a bit of a breeze out of the southwest, maybe a gust up to 20 miles per hour. But that southwesterly wind is going to continue to usher in some Gulf moisture from down to the southwest. So it could make this 87 feel a little bit warmer at times. Let's take a look at your day one storm outlook. Zooming in here on central Georgia first. No one is in a level risk for seeing anything in the way of severe weather throughout today. However, we do see the level 1 for northern portions of Georgia, areas of upstate South Carolina down to the Atlantic coast, most of North Carolina, Tennessee, areas of Kentucky, areas of Virginia, up into the DMV area of the country. So the greater risk is going to be up to the north of us. However, we are fairly close to that green shade, maybe a couple counties away. So that's why I'm highlighting the chance for areas north of Macon having a chance of seeing maybe a strong storm, maybe even a severe one. However, the chances are still going to be fairly low, just like what we saw yesterday. So we'll zoom back in to give you another image that we are not under any kind of severe weather risk for today, but we can't throw it out of the window. Obviously, have to still remain on guard due to this time of year. So playing future view into this afternoon. Once again, most of the rain falling just to the north, the northeast of us. And as we go throughout the afternoon hours, clearing out, and we are not going to stop there. I play future view all the way through into your Friday. We'll go back and talk about some specific times, but this goes all the way till 3 a.m. on Saturday, and then we start to see our next rain chance maybe approaching from the north and the northwest. I'll show you how the long range models resolve that in just 1 second, but let's backtrack for a minute. Let's go all the way to your Thursday morning after we get out of this afternoon, because if we see anything, it's going to be a very scattered shower, maybe even a light shower at the very most, or just some scattered sprinkles. Thursday morning going to be maybe partly clear. We'll see probably a beautiful sunrise, I'm hoping, if that cloud cover does remain to the west. Going into lunchtime on Thursday, mostly sunny skies. As we wrap up your Thursday, typically when we've seen most of this rain continue to pop up, nothing in the way of rain. Going to be a nice and clear day finally on your 7-day forecast without any rain chances. It will go all the way into Friday morning. Now you will notice I was talking about that southwesterly flow, ushering in some of that moisture from the Gulf and pushing it up here into our neck of the woods. And we do see a good amount of maybe just light and isolated sprinkles along the Gulf Coast, areas in Alabama and the panhandle of Florida. We could see some of those light showers creep up into our area. Maybe a sprinkle welcomes you out the door on Friday morning. Not really too confident in that whatsoever. And even if we did see that all over central Georgia, I don't even think it classifies as enough to really throw even a 10% chance of rain on there. That's going to be probably the lightest shade of the green that you will see on this future view map for the foreseeable future. And going into your Friday, it may be a little bit of a cloudy start, maybe a little bit gloomy. You may have a couple sprinkles welcoming you out the door, not much sunshine. We'll make up for that going into Friday afternoon and evening. 5 o'clock on Friday looking nice and beautiful. Going into your Friday night plans, still looking nice and dry, so can't use the weather as an excuse not to go out and have some fun on Friday night with your friends, with your family, maybe have a nice cookout. And then we go all the way to the end of where future view does go right now, which is going to be 3 a.m. on Saturday. As we progress throughout today, we'll get a better view hour by hour creeping into Saturday, how these short range models are going to resolve this next approaching system. But for now, we still have to go to the long range models. I think tomorrow morning I'll be able to give you a pretty good idea, at least in terms of coverage of rain. But what I'm seeing right now, obviously up here, is definitely its fair share of fairly organized showers and some thunderstorms with some of the darker colors there. Now, going into the long range models, not necessarily picking up at that much organization staying put, but we are going to be warm. We're still going to be humid, so very well could be dealing with the possibility of thunderstorms as we go into the weekend. But things are disagreeing pretty drastically right now. I need to see future view and some of the short range models say something of the same consistent idea before I go in and throw maybe one of those general thunderstorm icons on Saturday or Sunday. So let's talk the humidity. Quite a roller coaster ride. Not necessarily for the next 4 days. We will see that steady uptick with that southwest flow continuing to usher in some Gulf moisture. Saturday should be our peak in terms of how much moisture is in the atmosphere. Then we go down the roller coaster for Sunday. Looks like we might get a little bit of an ushering in of some drier air. So maybe rain chances on Sunday aren't looking as good as they are on Saturday because we don't have as much surface moisture available. And then it starts to rise back up on Monday, drops back down Tuesday. We'll see how that plays out. It likes to vary a lot as we go into the end of this muggy meter, but it is still going to remain at a noticeable level, even get into periods of some very muggy weather as we head into the weekend, and with temperatures only on the rise, not necessarily looking like the best thing in the world. So 6 a.m. on Saturday. So early Saturday morning, picking up on that same line we were just talking about at the end of your short range future view. Good agreement on some organization, which is exactly what we saw, but we flash forward it into your Saturday afternoon, your Saturday evening, and I'll go back a little bit kind of in the in-between periods because most of you probably have your plans during the daytime on Saturday. This is Saturday at 3 p.m. That whole line of organization is continuing to have good agreement amongst the GFS and the Euro on our long-range models. that it's going to fall apart. And this is during the warmest portion of the day. So this is number one, kind of indicating that it's slowing down in motion. I think it's going to kind of sit just to the north of us or maybe just around us, because we don't see activity start to flare back up until we get into the evening hours, more so the nighttime hours on Saturday. And these models typically do run a little bit later, maybe a couple hours later than what we're normally used to seeing on our short range future view. So we'll have to continue to see how that plays out, like I said, as we get it in view on our short range future view. But then 11 p.m. on Saturday, still a chance of seeing some organized rain in the form of showers, possibly even some thunderstorms. I think we'll definitely see our fair share of maybe some scattered thunderstorms, but not necessarily confident in the severe criteria of it as of right now. We're not in any extended outlooks as it does currently stand. And this is just what one model says. This is just what the GFS in green does say. The European model not necessarily agreeing with it. You can kind of see some of the shades of that blue underneath the green some places, and that's what you see over here on the Alabama-Mississippi line, not seeing it here in central Georgia. So this is just what one model is saying. We obviously like to look at a couple of models, like to see some agreement before we get more confident in our prediction. Then going into Sunday, I was talking about that downtick in the humidity. We might just get enough of some of that cooler and drier air. Well, actually not necessarily cooler. Don't even let me tell you that, because it's not going to be cool whatsoever. Some of that drier air creep into the southeast corner of the country. It still looks like the front has a little bit of organization. So if it is to stall, you can kind of see that main axis of rain in the green color for the GFS, maybe the blue color having that front sag a little bit farther to the south in the blue on the European model. But it does look like maybe we get a little bit of ushering in of this kind of setup that I'm seeing is more like a backdoor front, maybe even indicating a slight wedge to usher in some of that drier air. We'll continue to see how that plays out too. But then going into your Monday afternoon, rain chances try to linger, but finally they do get out of here as we go into Tuesday. Another frontal boundary taking shape over to the west. But by the time we go through Wednesday, there is agreement that this is going to be mainly to the north of us, that next organized rain chance towards the midweek next week. However, I have seen some models and I have seen some surface fronts that are picking up on at least some widespread precipitation down here. It's all going to depend upon what ingredients that we do have in place by the time this does roll through, and if the front does sag far enough south to bring us some rain here in the state of Georgia. Wouldn't be opposed to missing out on this front. We've gotten our fair share of rain. Maybe we could get a little bit more this weekend to give us a bit of a cushion on that year departure number, and then we could kind of miss out on the next rain chance. That would probably be pretty welcome, I'm sure, for all of you. You probably want some sunshine, but you want some sunshine. Just remember, it's the middle of May here in central Georgia. We get an early start to summer here, and yes, we are going to soar up to the 90-degree mark after patiently awaiting it over the last couple of weeks. We've gotten well into the upper 80s. I think 88 we've hit as a high temperature both the past 2 months. So for April and for March. And now we are going to see temperatures soar around 90, maybe a couple degrees above it. I think tomorrow is going to probably be the first day that we see a good chunk of areas in central Georgia hit the 90-degree mark. If you remember a couple weeks back, we did have a lot of upper 80s one day, and then we were showing during the evening show, Rochelle actually popped up a 93-degree mark. So they're probably saying, oh, okay, we've already felt that 90-degree heat so far. What are you talking about? It was just one isolated area. I think the rest of central Georgia will join you in your 90-degree party this weekend down in Wilcox County. So 92, 91, 90, not much variation. They don't feel too different. And even these areas above the 90-degree mark don't feel too different from that 87 I have forecasted for today. All are going to be above average, but what's going to matter is that feels like number, and that does give me an idea. I wonder if I can pop that graphic up for you if I have it down here. Let's go into future view feels like throughout the rest of today and into your weekend. It's going to take a minute to pop up, probably a minute to load too. It's been a minute since I've updated this graphic, so haven't really had to talk about this since we had things like wind chills to talk about. So maybe 87, 86. These models do like to run a little bit below what we typically do forecast. So we typically like to go on the upper end. So it feels like at least like 92, 91 for tomorrow afternoon already. And then going into Friday afternoon, oh boy, some 95s and some 96s is what it's feeling like outside. So Yes, it's about time that we hit the 90-degree mark. We've gotten very, very close, and it still may seem too early. Number one, we can't complain about the 90s whatsoever because I told you what's happening over in Texas today. Mid 100s, upper 100s. That's the actual temperatures. That's not even the feels like temperature. Although they are going to be rather dry, that is still way too warm for our liking, especially in the month of May. Well, let's take a look at our average first 90-degree day all time since we started taking records back in the late 1800s. The earliest we ever hit 90 degrees was in March 10th, many years ago. So thankfully we did not hit 90 degrees in March. That would have really made it feel like we jumped straight from winter all the way into summer without anything of the way of spring. However, that was just kind of an outlier. These are your outliers for the earliest and the latest. How about the latest we ever hit 90 degrees? Yes, that was June 29th many years ago as well. So that was almost getting into July before we even saw the 90-degree mark. Well, good news is we may seem like it's a little bit of an early start here in the month of May. We know that we typically start to warm up as we get into the end of the school year. I know I've had my high school graduation and it has been brutally hot. Upper 90s, tons of humidity, feels well over 100 degrees. Believe it or not, if we hit 90 degrees tomorrow, we're actually going to be 11 days past the typical time that we normally hit 90 degrees for the first time. May 4th is the average first 90-degree day here in Macon. Areas farther up to the north like Atlanta, up into North Georgia and such, they're a little bit later to hit the 90-degree mark. And areas down to the south maybe a little bit earlier into the very, very beginning of May. But still, it's just kind of a reminder that we're a little behind schedule actually in terms of hitting the 90s. So not much complaining that we can do, especially since we got a little bit of a later start to kind of this heat wave that is going to settle in. And I say heat wave because we know temperatures are going to get warmer. We know the humidity is going to get worse, especially throughout June, July, and into August. But this is kind of the first time that we're seeing that 9-0 on the 7-day forecast. Got to give your body some time to get used to it. You're only kind of used to what you have been feeling. So it's all relative to what you have been feeling. But hopefully the steady warm up into the 80s with a little bit of humidity has been a good warm up for you to start to be prepared for what's to come as we head into the weekend. So still that 20%, that pesky rain chance for today. You may see a shower. The farther north you live, I wouldn't rule out seeing a low-end thunderstorm. A severe thunderstorm is not out of the question. However, my confidence in that is pretty low. Very similar forecast to what we had yesterday, but I think the coverage of rain is going to be even less impressive than what we saw. 87 for a high today, and then we are bouncing up to the 90s tomorrow. So 90 for a high temperature, mostly sunny skies. 92 on Friday, once again continuing with the mostly sunny skies. We'll see on and off cloud cover, but be thankful for the cloud cover. It's going to provide you with a bit of shade from some of this heat. And then the rain chances return Saturday and Sunday. Right now, looking at the long-range models, I might go up a little bit once we get this in view of the short-range future view going into tomorrow morning. But 20% is where it does remain at right now. Some of that rain's going to linger a little bit on Sunday. I'm more keen to probably actually right now maybe put a 30 or a 40% on Saturday as opposed to Sunday, because Sunday we did see that downtick in humidity. So I think that will definitely help for keeping the rain pretty limited and pretty scattered in nature. But if we don't see any rain, still going to reach somewhere around that 90-degree mark for a high temperature. That continues into next week. Some rain chances linger into Monday. That's why I threw 10% on it. And then Tuesday, it looks like we do clear out before maybe another system approaches sometime next Wednesday. I don't think until that system moves through that we'll actually get a little bit of some slightly cooler air, and slightly cooler now that we're getting into this time of year. I'm talking about some mid 80s, maybe some low 80s for some high temperatures. We need a very strong cold front, or we need a lot of rain in the forecast and a lot of cloud cover to keep temperatures below the 80-degree mark as we're heading into a little bit of that early summer here in central Georgia. So just get through today, and then we have finally 2 days, a break from having any days on the rain chances for Thursday and Friday. And as we go into tomorrow, we'll start to turn more focus into your weekend forecast. Right now, it does still look like we have the chance of rain. Just how widespread and the intensity of it is really what we're trying to fine tune until we get a view on the short range and the higher resolution models, which are really good guidance for the exact timing of it, the exact locations of it. So continue to stay updated for that, especially tomorrow at 10:30 on this extended forecast. I'll be able to give you a much better idea of what's going on in terms of planning your weekend or planning any outdoor activities. I know lots of kids are wrapping up school this weekend, getting ready for a lot of graduations happening next weekend. So hopefully we can get some good weather. We probably deserve some good weather this weekend for any plans that you do have, because last weekend was not very good weather to be outside whatsoever. But as we get into the summertime months, these 20% chances of rain each and every day probably going to become a bit of a theme on your 7-day forecast, but don't let it interrupt any plans that you have. Still pretty small rain chances, and right now still looking to be fairly scattered. That does mean you have a good chance of remaining dry, just like we did yesterday, just like you do today, and hopefully like you will for Saturday and Sunday. So thanks for tuning in. I think that's been about long enough, about 25 minutes.